Hi, my name is Sam Led, and welcome to The Fearless Now. This is for you in you in the nosebleed seats, if you're looking for an easier way to approach anxiety, stress, and unhealthy habits from the inside out. There's no techniques and no strategies, so sit back, relax, and let me be your peace of mind Uber driver, here on The Fearless Now. Hello, everybody. My name is Sam Led. I am a transformational coach, soon to be author of the book Fearless, which I can't believe. This is episode number 30 of The Fearless. Now, I have a very special guest who is literally around the world and then some. She's into future. She sees the future in real time. And I listened to her podcast for the first time and I just dropped in. Her name is Myas Journey and her podcast is called Saga City. Did I pronounce it correctly?
The podcast is actually called A Groovy Enlightened Life.
I like that better, but Saga City is part of it though, right?
Sagacity Rising is the business that I own.
I even pronounced it wrong. Well,
That's perfectly fine.
I'm learning. Us Americans, we don't pronounce anything correctly. Myas Journey is a spiritual guide and shamanic practitioner, and she's based out of, not Brisbane, Australia.
North of there.
You're in Queensland.
That's correct, yep. In a little beach town called Moore Park Beach.
It sounds just like where I am right now. I'm in Santa Barbara, which is a small little beach town. So very cool. So Myas is a spiritual guide and shamanic practitioner. And when I first heard her podcast weeks ago, she reminded me of one of my favorite national public radio talk show hosts, very famous talk show host who interviews thought leaders and actors and scientists. Her name is Terry Gross. It's called Fresh Air. And you sound just like her, just this calm, cool, groovy voice. And it's wonderful. So Myas is a spiritual guide and shamanic practitioner in service of others on their soul journey of uncovering their true nature, guiding them to create and live a life aligned to their soul's purpose. She's a brilliant podcaster, a writer, and an artist dedicated to sharing wisdom, teachings, and stories from her own soul journey to guide, inspire, and encourage others to connect with her own inner wisdom. Well, I can't speak today. I should be speaking. I'm a podcaster. So Myas, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sam. It's great to be here.
If you could, unwrap some of that I just read and tell me what you do, briefly your journey, and kick some fresh cognitive reverie in my ear because I'm just so fascinated by your work. It's a lot of your work overlaps with my work, which is wonderful.
So I actually started out as an engineer. So I actually went and studied robotics engineering at university. So That was actually early on, worked in engineering and in the mining industry, actually. Probably around 2015, I decided to get out of that and start my own business, which is Sagacity Rising. Essentially, sagacity meaning wisdom. So wisdom increasing, wisdom rising, and in an attempt to help others connect to their own inner wisdom as well. But back, I guess, during my working career, 2012 was the big year where one day I just woke up and I was like, you know what? This sucks. I was really in a place where it was like all I did was work 13, 14-hour days, come home, and I was wrecked. And because I was commuting also, so you would drive out, whether it be a Sunday to a location or it could be a Monday morning, you'd work 5 days and you'd drive back home. You'd have maybe a day at home to catch up and do things. And it just felt like work, sleep. And ultimately, my health suffered. I mean, that was just a given. It was going to happen. So I woke up that day and I was like, you know what, there's got to be more. You can't just work and then die. It made no sense to me. So I really started to tap in and explore my own purpose. I really just looked at books. I read everything. I consumed everything on the internet, basically, and explored it within myself. And that started my own inner journey. And funnily enough, over that period of time, I was still working. And as I said, my health started to suffer. So tapping into, I guess, that inner wisdom also allowed me to realize, hang on, I've been blocking out or just completely avoiding my own health issues. There were symptoms. They had been there for years, but for some reason, our brains have the capacity to just block certain things out and just keep going and keep moving forward. And so that sort of happened to me. And then when I started to take notice, I went, you know what? No, this is not the work for me. I've got to change. I've got to do something different. And it was quite funny. I was having a conversation with my mom and I said, look, what if I just become like a coach for people? And she instantly just said, yep. There was no hesitation. There was nothing. She just went, yeah, do that. And it was funny because throughout my whole working career, I had also been doing that type of work within the businesses because I was a leader of people. So, you know, I had people working for me. So there was always that aspect. And working in, I guess, a male-dominated industry, there was always those select females that you would connect with, and they would look up and come to me and ask for advice, especially around career or conflict in the workplace and things like that. So naturally, that was the next step, I guess, for me. I went and studied life coaching, essentially professional life coaching. And from there, I sort of evolved it over time and tapped back into my spiritual roots.
Literally and figuratively.
Absolutely.
You want to hear something funny? A fun fact, actually, it's the truth. I know 3 engineers, not robotic. One's a settling engineer, is a very good friend of mine who is also an actor. And he uses both hemispheres very well. He's a brilliant actor and he's a great writer. And I think he's going to follow the same path you are. He's a brilliant mind, but it feels like a job. And so he's really seeing it. And you saw it. It was 100% technicolor. That was your inner wisdom. It was a calm voice saying, Maya, it's time to do what you really love. Take your skills and
absolutely
go forth.
Yeah, and that's absolutely correct. And I guess that's what led me to help others in exactly that space. It was all about, I guess I help people answer 3 fundamental questions. It is, firstly, who am I really? So that's not just on the surface, that's moving beyond our identity and who we perceive ourselves to be and exploring that spiritual aspect, our true nature, essentially. And then stepping into what is true for me, because we live our own experience in the world. We perceive things in our own beautiful, unique way. And a lot of people don't sit down and go, what do I actually believe in? Or what is true for me right now, which can change? That's an evolving process and thing that can change throughout our lives. And then the third step is all about, okay, I understand who I am really. I know what's true for me. So how shall I live? How will I create that life that's fully aligned to who I truly am?
A lot of the work you do overlaps with the understanding that I shared the 3 principles, which is realigning yourself to your truth, which is not some kind of cosmic woo-woo Hollywood spiritual experience. We see it, we point to it all the time. And that's what you saw. That
absolutely.
I'm more than the accumulation of dollars that I have in my bank account, or I'm not the sum total of my knowledge, skills, and abilities as an engineer, but I'm a lot more expansive than that. I'm a lot bigger than that in a very humble, grounded, loving, and centered way. And so they're living in their fear. They're living in their thinking about, if I take this risk, what's going to happen to me? How am I going to make a living? How am I going to pay the bills if I go on my own? And 100% of that is your brain trying to keep you safe. It's trying to keep you safe. It doesn't want you to take a risk. It doesn't want you to go off on your own because that's not safe.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's that whole pack mentality as well. You're safer in a group. Right. So stick with what everybody else is doing and you'll be okay. But to venture off on your own and really follow your own truth and your own path, absolutely. It can be quite scary.
And then have you heard of Terence McKenna? And he wrote
that. No, I haven't.
That fear is like running through fire and you're going to suffer. And when we really discovered that taking a risk is like jumping into a feather bed. I'm paraphrasing Terence McKenna. Sorry, Terence, may you rest in peace. But he was a brilliant psychonaut. And, he said that fear is just an illusion.
Absolutely.
Because life is a risk, whether you are working at an engineering firm and working a 40-hour week or you're on your own. It's the same thing. It's exactly the same thing, but we're caught up in something called thought that changes our perception of things a lot. Tell me more about the teachings and your understanding of alignment with our true self, our true nature.
Yeah, I think, I sort of hinted at it before, those 3 fundamental key areas is it's really about understanding who you are. And I don't think, especially as adults, we get to a point where we just fall into routines. We fall into life. Sometimes, I know in my own case, that's what happened to me. It was just like, oh, here's a door open. Okay, I'll go through that one. It was just this ongoing routine, I suppose. You're just stumbling along, following a path without any sort of consciousness about it, I think. And sometimes we never get to a point where we just sit down because there's so much going on around us and sit down and just find that silence and go, well, what do I really want? What do I want to create in my life, truly? Who am I without all the noise?
Well said.
Who am I really, And when you step into that place, you can unfold so many amazing things about yourself. You tap into that inner wisdom and it shares with you some things that you potentially lost along the way. Or even probably one of the more things I see with clients is they'll tap in and go, oh, I want to be a musician, or I've always wanted to play the guitar or the keyboard, but I never find time to do it. Can you help me do that? Find time in my schedule, because they all believe it's around time management. And I said, well, sit with that and explore that for yourself. It doesn't matter what it is. Everybody's got something that they think they wanted to do or have always wanted to do in their life. Just sit with that silence, and actually ask yourself and be truthful, brutally honest. Is this still true for me? Ask that question, because sometimes it'll just pop up and you go, well, actually, you know what? It's kind of like a nice to have, but it's right now with the priorities and what's going on in my life, it's not as important as I thought it was.
I love that you mentioned that, because I had a client a couple of weeks ago that said to me, I've always wanted to play the piano. I've always wanted to take lessons and start a small group, not for money or anything, just that's one of my passions. Yeah. I said, No, you don't. She's like, what do you mean, no, you don't? I said, because like other things in your life, like Maya, you're self-discovering and wanting to be a coach and a brilliant coach and sharing this understanding and helping people. You'll find a way to do it if you really want to do it. And it's not a forceful push. It's a very calm, gentle voice that says,
absolutely.
Yeah, you know what? That's exactly right. But we put so much emphasis, like you mentioned, because the noise is louder. It's like when you and I spoke when I was on your show, we talked about, the brains that helicopter parent. No, don't do that. No, that's not safe. That's not safe. What's going to say it's not safe for mostly everything, when you think about it. And so what you said was spot on. My client, if he really wanted to do it, if he really wanted to take that leap and find time and make time in his schedule to take lessons and become a pianist, he would do it.
That's
Don't you
exactly
think?
right.
Because we put so much pressure on ourselves, and the pressure is illusory. It's just a lot of thought thinking.
It is. And it's also, we are in that productive mindset. That's been part of our history for quite a long time, about achieving things. It's always about, let's tick that thing off the list. Let's achieve that thing. Let's keep doing it. So then that pressure also builds, because you're like, okay, so I'm 43. Okay, I haven't learnt the guitar yet, or I haven't played the piano yet. It's a time management issue. I've just got to try and fit it into my schedule and tick that box, But the more pressure you put on things like that, and especially the creative type aspects, the more it's hard. It becomes hard. Whereas, like what you said, anything that you're choosing to do that really aligns to you is easy. It is that natural, calm, peaceful place that you get to. And it just happens with ease. There's no forcing.
That's beautiful and very true. Every coach has a different way of pointing their clients back to who they really are, because we all forget how to polish the lens of the heart. What I mean by that, not in a woo spiritual way, but in a spiritual way, because we are spiritual beings in a physical body. To tap back into who we are, which our essential nature is being creative and sharing our truth with others, being in the moment, being present, and all the great things that happen in the present moment, all the great decisions we make that are successful for us in our life, whether it's love or career, is in when we drop into that quiet space, that space before thought that I say. What's that like for you as a coach working with a new client? So say someone is wanting to make a change, but has financial issues or is just scared to make that jump. And you see that what they want to do, just because of what they share, there might be potential there. What is that like? How does that conversation go with your clients? I know that's a lot, but you're up for the challenge.
I'll try and break it down. No. It really does go back to helping them see their own truth and what they're saying and what they believe right in this current moment. So if it's a new client, it's really about listening to their story. Everyone's got a story. That's probably pretty much your first session is the story comes out. And you just listen, and you listen to the key aspects of what's really going on for them, and you highlight and bring that forward for them. And you really ask that question, is this really truly what you want to create in your life? Like, what is it you really truly need or want? And I think that is just a question that we don't often ask ourselves. And it does take somebody to skillfully ask the right questions to help people open up for a change. Because sometimes, it's scary. Some of the thoughts and ideas that people have are like, well, I could never do that because I have all these responsibilities at home. I have a family, I have a partner, or like you said, financial concerns. They're limiting beliefs. If you explore each one of those and say, well, okay, say you didn't have any of that. Say you had all the money in the world, all the time in the world, what would change? And really get them to explore that, because sometimes it's absolutely got nothing to do with money.
Isn't that so true though? Like, I think for us as coaches is getting comfortable, really being direct and honest in a loving way, and facilitating the kind of untangling of the conditioning we all come to the table with, right? Our own sense of who we are and what society thinks we are, and what our family thinks we are, and what our friends think we are, and what our job thinks we, et cetera, even our dog or cat. Yes. They're smarter than us many times.
Absolutely.
And I think that for as a coach, and to unpack that, it can happen in one session. And I think that for me, the work that I do is the core thesis of it all. It's not even about what they're stuck on, because I notice for myself, and you do too, I mean, that there's the initial reason why they're there. They have obviously a reason, and we provide value to them by pointing them back to their wisdom, their inner wisdom. But don't you find it sometimes a lot of it's hyperbole when they share the story? It's like the never ending story. All of us can sit down and have this. Remember the movie Never Ending Story? Great movie.
Yes, absolutely. I cried the first time I ever saw it.
Oh, I still cry. I watched it with my partner a couple months ago, and I'm like, remember the swamp of...
The swamp.
What's it called?
Yes.
The depression swamp?
Yeah.
The sad swamp? I don't know what you call it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
We get lost in this sad swamp when we're sharing our story, especially for clients who have never really shared their truth or needs. They're wanting to make a change in their life with anybody, maybe a friend or a family member, but it wasn't really heard. Listen, we love our families, but helicopter parent, remember? They're like an extension of the helicopter parent, the brain, right? And so we get stuck in quicksand. Me personally, before I became a coach and did this work, I was stuck in the same conditioning and beliefs that most of us are stuck in. How does that look for your clients? Because for me, there's a lot of hyperbole. There's a lot of story. This is what I want. This is my growing edge. And then there's the yada, 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 the drama around it, the story, the conversation. It's like, remember Peanut Snoopy? When Peppermint Patty picks the phone up and you hear wah, 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 wah. How do you deal with the wah, 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 wahs? Because that's a big piece of it. We all do it.
Yeah, look, for me, it's all about creating space for someone to feel safe in. It's really about allowing them to share whatever it is they're seeking to share in the moment. And, with the hyperbole or whatever the chatting, the extra stories, the processes, the things that they've taken on board, the things that they believe are true about themselves, you just let them share them. Because like you said, often they don't share those things with others, or others are not particularly listening. They're not in the present moment, creating that space for the person to be able to share and not provide the feedback, because providing the feedback, and I mean, that's what we do as humans a fair bit. Like you said, the helicopter thing, we're always thinking for the solution or the answer to whoever's telling us the story. But it's actually stepping back from that. And as a coach, you're actually just listening. You just listen for the things that aren't said. You're listening between the words. The story can rattle on, and that's fine. There will be points, perhaps, that I'll pull them up and say, are you listening to what you're actually saying? Or I'll feed back to them what they've been sharing with me, and then ask a simple question. Do you really believe that? Is that true for you, really? And it really awakens some people into going, oh, you know what? Well, no, not really. They come to their own realizations, the stories that they have taken on board, and they claim as their own. And there's a beautiful shamanic saying that comes from my teacher and mentor, and they teach that nothing is yours, but everything is for you.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And I just find it's beautiful. And it
can you say that again?
Yeah, for sure. So it's nothing is yours, but everything is for you. So we tend to take on so many things and own it. Our fears, our worries, our concerns, our stresses. We take them on and say, well, this is my thing, my disease, my fear. And in fact, it's not yours. It doesn't belong to you, and you don't belong to it. But it is for you. It is for you, for growth and expansion. I love it.
I don't know what to say after that, because that was just brilliant. And I think if a coach can get to that part, everything else becomes that feather bed. What I said, Terence McKenna's quote. We stare fear straight in the face. The brain does one thing, but our spirit, who we really are, which is well-being, successful, love, and filled with infinite potential, once we see it as a feather bed, especially when our clients start to see it. Because let's be honest, life happens. And
absolutely.
As Sid Banks says, he's a Scottish mystic who had this kind of enlightenment experience 50 years ago. He says, life's a contact sport. We're going to get our knocks. It's going to happen. But in the space between those knocks, why limit yourself because of the noise? Why not jump onto that feather bed? Because it is a feather bed. The illusion that's being made up in real time is by a machine that's trying to keep you safe very innocently is real tragedy when you see people's potential, like what's possible. But they're caught up in this story, in the old stories that are stored in our brain. Have you ever had this is really interesting because this goes along the same line about the story and the hyperbole, that you'd have a client that comes to you and they're in a state of mind they're scared, they're questioning themselves, they're questioning coaching. Everything is up for grabs when it comes to challenging. They need to challenge somebody because they think that what's going on outside of them is actually what's causing them to feel this way. When we feel this way, whether we're rich or poor or healthy or sick or trying to make a life change or not, when you have that kind of, I would say, more evolved argument or a questioning conversation by your client, have you ever spoken to them again and like they're a different person, like they're more open? They finally see and they drop in and they're like, oh yeah, sorry, Maya, for circling their wagons. That's my favorite part of the whole deal with coaching is because like you see the resistance because we all do it.
I've never had anyone completely be like opposed to everything. I think I've been pretty lucky in that space. It's never been, everything's against me, type thing. But more people, like you said, circling the wagons, going round and round with exactly the same story, but it may be shared in different ways and just trying to guide them to a place where they can realize, well, hang on, that's the same story. I'm just applying it somewhere else in my life or to a different thing I'm trying to achieve. But I think, like you said, the beauty of it is when you see the penny drop. And I had a client one time come to me and we had been working many sessions. So we were getting close to the end of the sessions. I think we had 20 sessions in total and we were probably around session maybe 15, 16 or something. And, you just hold the space and you help them for what they need help on. And then this one session, this client's come back to me all gung-ho and is like, this is what's happened. And he came back with this comment around, I've just realized I don't have to be everything for everyone. And It was just this simple comment. And I've just gone, oh my God, that's fantastic.
Right.
And we just spent the session celebrating the fact that he had gotten to that place within himself. He had been doing the work. He'd been sort of doing the work, sort of on and off the trail a little bit. And he finally got into a place where he was doing it more consistently, the work for himself. And this is what he uncovered. And it was just brilliant how he could see that across all the people and interactions from his workplace, from his personal life, his family, and his partner and children and everything, how he was showing up and how he didn't have to be that way anymore or to release that from himself. And it was just brilliant. So yeah, I love that aspect of it when the penny drops or when someone comes back with this insightful inner wisdom and you're like, yes, this is it. Now keep doing more of that.
That's right. And like, what do you mean? What am I doing? I don't know what I'm doing. It's like, exactly. It's when you don't know. It's when you're not up in your conceptual mind trying to intellectualize it. And I think that's half the battle there. We do our best work when we're in the present moment. We're not trying to intellectualize stuff. I love what you said there and that's a metaphor, the penny drop for insight.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because the quality of mind in the moment is everything. We come to a coaching session and we're wrapped around the axle. We're just caught up in some distorted, some old thought patterns, some old thinking. Maybe we're worried about, I don't know, paying the taxes. Our mind wanders a lot, especially mine. But I think that the quality of our thinking, especially as when we're working with clients, when a client's cognitive lens is a little distorted or dirty, it happens. We all drop in and out of low mood is everything, because what you just described is exactly what I was pointing to regarding the quality of our thinking vacillates all day long. And what happens, and I would love to hear if you want to share your own experience, what happens is that when a client is really down on himself or just not seeing their future or just really stuck, if you wait a couple hours, they'll see clear again, like we all do. But what tends to happen, and I would love to hear what you think about this, is we think that cloudy thinking, we think that low mood or those old feelings of discouragement or anxiety or whatever it is keeping us stuck in this feedback loop of not moving forward and not making a change in our life or not doing something that we really want to do, is that we believe the noise more than we believe the quiet voice. And I think that's everything. And as coaches, we are only as good as our own quiet between our ears.
It's an art. It's something that you practice and you learn to do. And I guess, as you were mentioning earlier, if someone comes to a session in a low mood, I'll instantly know anyway.
Because you're a shamanic engineer coach.
You can instantly sort of see or feel what's going on. And I'm sure you've had the same thing where you have somebody saying one thing, but you can see there's something else going on. There's completely different feelings and emotions and things they probably need to be working on as opposed to what they're logically telling you they need right now. And generally, I just listen to the story and then I'll stop them at some point. I always keep feeding them back to themselves at the end of the day. And it's just, so tell me what's really going on.
Right.
You know, like you let them say their spiel because you need to get that out. That's stuff that's important to them right now. And it is generally from the mind. Okay. So the mind needs to share what it needs to share. Cool. I do not have a problem with that. I'm not going to stop someone from sharing those things. Get it out of your system, feed it back to them, and then ask the question, so what do you really want to work on today? Or what's really going on in your life? They just open up generally. Or you can sort of point at a few things if you need to
point
gently
at the
and
obvious.
lovingly.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, gently and lovingly, obviously. You're not going to smash them with anything.
Right.
But yeah, and you just share what you're perceiving about them and how they've presented themselves, you know, and share a couple of, I normally do the sort of general, so maybe you're feeling this, or, you know, even though I may sort of already pinpointed something, I still allow them to discover what it is they want to share for this session, because I'm not there to essentially guide them down a path, I think, because that's just not the way you do it. It's what do they need in the moment. So you create that space, you ask those questions to help them explore themselves a little deeper.
I love what you said there, because I think the greatest, as a new coach, if someone's just coming into this wonderful industry, whether you're a 3 Principles coach or you're just an ICF trained coach or whatever kind of coach, whatever modality you use, even though I don't believe in modalities, I don't think they're, for me, in terms of where I see it, are effective long-term, because we forget all the time. Then we come back and we forget. It's really a matter of seeing what is really true versus what is caught up in that machinery. New coaches get caught up in the hyperbole, innocently get caught up in the story. And it's because we're human beings, you know, we're stimulus response creatures, right?
Yeah.
Cause and effect. We very innocently, instead of connecting with our clients, really connecting and really seeing human to human contact, not just cognitive reverie, but not just the conversation and trying to find, oh yeah, he said this, so I need to do this. I need to reframe. It's just about hearing and listening and really seeing on many levels, but most importantly on a soul level, on a heart to heart level, because our job as coaches is not about doing it for them. It's about just taking the map out. No, colder. No, you're getting farther away from the treasure. No, warmer. Oh, there you are. Remember the video game, and I'm aging myself, in the 80s, The Adventures of Zelda?
Yes, yeah.
Coaching is like The Adventures of Zelda, ladies and gentlemen. It's all about the greatest coaches really can drop in with their clients and seeing beyond the noise. Yeah. And it sounds like you're doing that with your clients. And again, we all get caught up in our clients' stories sometimes, especially if they're really difficult stories. We're still human, which is great, because it leads me to my next question about being human and also going to other places on a spiritual level beyond the outside world, the 3D world. But because as a shaman, as a shamanic coach, you go somewhere else. You tap into other realms beyond what we can see and what we can feel and what we can hear. Can you share more about that, about your shamanic training and how that helps and how that plays a role in your teachings and your coaching?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess with shamanism, it's a practice. It's similar to if you decided to do Buddhism or something like that. They're not religions. They're not related to religious type aspects. They're really just a way of being, a way of life, essentially. So delving into, I guess, the shaman side of things was always something that I think I was always led to anyway, even from a child, which is quite surprising because I would never have known what a shaman was back then. But it was always something that has resonated through my entire life. And I may have come across it one time. There was a cartoon. It was called The Lost Cities of Gold I can't remember it. There was a cartoon that was out back in the 80s and it was The Mysterious Cities of Gold. That's what it was called. And this little kid and his group of friends would go around and visit all the ancient sites. So the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Incas, the Mayans and they would have adventures. And I just fell in love with that cartoon. And I think from that point was when this side of the shaman side, wanting to visit ancient cultures, getting into all of that sort of history was something that became, I guess, manifested in me later in life.
Well, do you think it became manifested in you or it was always there? Because
it was always there.
I think always there. I think that's a better way because your calling is coaching. And it's a Venn diagram with the shamanic training. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so I went to Egypt in 2016, experienced some amazing things in Egypt. I went to Peru in 2019, had an absolutely amazing experience with some shaman people. We went on to these sacred sites, received lots of transmissions and ceremonies. And that's when I really lent into the shaman side of things. And I guess with working in that space, when I'm working with a client, it is a little bit different, but it's exactly the same. I know this might sound a little bit strange, but it's almost like a modality in a way, because it's just another avenue. It's another opening, another way of seeing and working with a client and helping them tap in and see things from different perspectives. So it's really getting back into the feeling body, and it's really about closing off all that noise so that you can actually journey. So journeying, I love journeying. I love taking people on journeys.
I love that too. I did a couple.
Yeah, and I think helping people step into a different reality, I guess, as such, but also it does exist. It's just not something we perceive on an everyday basis. Helps them step out of their current situation, their current thinking, their current environment, to perceive things, to receive things, to tap into the inner wisdom, or even if they're, journeying to animals or other beings or places or locations or trees, it doesn't matter. Talking to Mother Nature, wherever you're journeying to and receiving that wisdom and the teachings from them for your current situation in life, it's just a way to open up in a different way and explore things from that perspective, I guess. Yeah.
Would it be okay if let's hit rewind? Let's go to the video.
It's your show. We can do whatever we like.
Would it be okay if you don't mind? Let's go back to like you shared initially kind of broad strokes about your shamanic training and your experience in Egypt. What was it specifically in Egypt or the other countries that were part of this journey? What was the pinnacle moment where you really kind of saw something? And how has that kind of cultivated your secret sauce of your power and your wisdom as a shamanic teacher or as a shamanic journey person and as a coach? Because it's a Venn diagram. I mean, some of the greatest coaches are shamans. Some of the greatest shamans are coaches. It would be brilliant because I really want to see, like, I've never really met a coach that's a straight ahead shaman. They study shamanic practices. They work with a shaman. But what was it specifically that really kind of was that jumping off point to including your shamanic training into the work you do with clients?
So as we mentioned earlier, I think there's always been a theme that I was heading in this direction for many, many years. And I remember as a child, I think I had more spiritual connection as a child than I did, through my 20s and 30s, essentially. And I think that could be the case for many people. You may
raising my hand, ladies and gentlemen, for better or for worse.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? You sort of reflect back and go, hang on, I was much more wise as a child than I was during my 20s and 30s. Right. And what really, I guess, changed for me is, as I mentioned before, I had the experience of my health declining through working. and everything like that. And when I jumped and I leapt, I was like, you know what? I don't know what the next step is, but I'm leaving my job and I'm just going to wing it and see what happens. And I had to get rid of that safety net because I actually got offered, oh, just take 12 months off and come back. You take as much time and then come back. And I said, no, I've got to cut it off and move forward and really uncover and discover myself again. And the trip to Egypt came that following, it came that year, actually. It was that year that I'd left work. I'd sort of started dabbling back into a bit of that spiritual sort of aspect. I had, I would sit and I would commune with my spirit animals that had just showed up to me one day just through play. I was just sort of playing around with this idea of spiritual stuff that I'd read in books and things. And, then I just started working with those 4 animals. And from there, went to Egypt. And Egypt was interesting. I mean, I'm always been very busy in my head. It's just me. Always overthinking, not so much overthinking to my detriment, but I definitely overanalyze and have plans up to X ready to go.
I'm a card-carrying member of that club.
That's it.
The busy in your head union. Thank God I know yearly dues.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was still in that thinking mode and working in such intellectual work. It was really hard to slow that down and get into my body because I'd been working outside of my body for so long. At the end of the day, I wasn't taking notice of the signs and symptoms that led me to where I was. And so coming back into your body, it's like bring myself back in, right in here, feeling things for a change. It's like, oh my God, all these feelings actually exist.
That's right.
I'm not a machine. That's correct. I'm not a robot.
That's right. You're not the Terminator.
That's exactly right. And just exploring that depth again that I'd lost. I really did. I had lost and it felt like I'd turned it off. So just stepping back into that space within myself and going to Egypt was really interesting because it was my first overseas trip ever. So we went over there. There was some unrest at the time, but we were perfectly safe. But everyone's like, oh my God, there's so much unrest, be careful. And it's like, no, it's fine. I'm going. And we just explored the temples. The first experience I had was in this one temple, and I cannot remember the name of it, but I have to Google it. And it's a temple that had one god on one side and the other god on the other side. It was built as a dual temple for the light and the dark. I just cannot remember the name of it, all the gods. And we weaved our way through the center of this thing. I didn't realize we were doing it at the time, but the guide deliberately did it because everybody experiences things very differently. I got to this point and I've just felt this weight pushing me down, literally pushing me down to the ground. And I've just bundled over and just started crying for absolutely no reason. I was just normally experiencing things, looking at all the carvings on the walls and listening to the history. And next minute, I'm on the ground, bawling my eyes out for no reason. And I'm not a big crier. I haven't really cried a lot during my lifetime.
What, you tell me engineers don't cry?
Well, we do behind the scenes. And it was just an amazing experience. Someone sort of lifted me up a little bit and then we've continued the journey and I couldn't keep going because there was something within that temple that was seeking to be my experience for that moment. And that was sort of my first sort of interaction with something, I guess, outside of myself in a way that I'd never experienced before. And I had to actually leave the temple because I was just bawling. Still to this day, it was like that. But there was a couple of little experiences like that. We visited this perfumery and it was a family business. And this guy was a Reiki master and he owned the perfumery and had all their beautiful oils, absolutely magnificent, these places. And he would sit there and the whole session, you just sit in this room with him and he would go through every one of the oils in relation to your chakras. So he took us up to the 15th chakra, essentially. But all he would do, and I didn't know he was doing this, but he would sit there and he'd talk about it and he'd just peruse the people in the room and he'd talk about it, explain what its properties are and how it works with your chakra and what to do with it and all this sort of stuff. And as he's talking along, he's sharing other wisdom. And the way he does things, and he actually mentioned it at the end, this is how he does his work, is he's actually sharing the messages that need to be heard by the certain people within the room that's coming through to him while he's just talking about...
He's channeling these messages.
He's channeling these messages while he's talking about this stuff. And then at one stage, he's stopped and he's looked directly at me and he's completely called me out in front of everybody. And I just bawled my eyes out. He's basically just said it was to do with responsibility. It was like, you take on too much responsibility. You're trying to be responsible for everybody and everything. It has to stop.
And you needed to go how many thousands of miles
to hear that?
To hear that?
Exactly.
No, right. But your body and your brain that's brilliant. And that's such a gift. And I
had to feel it within my body and have a complete stranger in a completely different land and have these experiences to really set me on the path of, you've been so disconnected to your own true self, Maya.
You know what's interesting? As human beings, we're such funny creatures. And again, that experience is beyond profound. I mean, I'm blown away. I've had experiences like that, but not as much. That's like next level. You're in Egypt, in this ancient country with tens of thousands of years of history, the first civilization, and you have this kind of enlightenment experience. That's not fair. I want to have that experience. Come on. Next life. The interesting thing is human beings are so silly. And again, I'm not singling you out because
that's perfectly fine.
But we think that we need to go to Egypt or Kathmandu or pilgrimage to Mecca. Pick your favorite pilgrimage. When we have those moments sitting in our couch in our home or having a cup of joe, a cup of tea, kombucha, sitting across from your friend, or you could be at the beach. And I think this is why, and tell me what you think. The noise for some of us, including myself, is so loud in our head. It's grinding us down because everyone's brain is different. Everyone's operating system within the brain is different. And when the noise is so loud and it repeats itself over and over and over again, of course, we're going to believe it sometimes. And I think that's why for a lot of us, like your experience in Egypt is the tipping point. But the universe and spirit are pointing us back to ourselves, not through thought, but in those quiet moments when we hear this quiet voice, which we hear all day long, we just don't pay attention to it enough because the noise is so distracting. And that is wonderful. I mean, I see a book in the future for you, Maya. I really do. I think you touched upon something that a lot of us pay no mind to because of the noise. We have it backwards, I think. Do you think that, I share the understanding of the three principles, which I shared with you on your podcast, which was wonderful. Do you kind of see that too as like we're living in this simulation and that it's not the outside world or our outside circumstances that are making us feel anything? It's that we're living in a world of thought versus a world of our outside reality. Like the reality of it is we're being narrated by a machine right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is all about coming back to your inner world and listening to that voice within. And we've spent so many eons, I guess, or whatever, millennia, doing the opposite to that. I've recently released a couple episodes on my podcast around the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And what I emphasize in there is we've been leading lives really governed by the divine masculine for quite a long time, which is all about the doing. I mean, there's plenty more around the divine masculine, but doing is probably one of the big things about achieving and doing, and also doing by ourselves. And when we bring in the divine feminine, it's more the energy around collaboration and community and that inner world within and doing things together as one for the betterment of all people and not just for the individual anymore. And we're really being led down that path now in stepping back into that inner world and trying to quieten all those external noises and voices and experiences and environments that we live in. To me, that was what 2020 was really about. It was actually stopping everybody. And it's like, okay, can you exist in your own self, isolated? What's going to come up for you, And there was lots of things. And I understand a lot of people did struggle. A lot of mental health concerns sort of played out in that space. It's true because it's a lot of thinking. We're living in this thinking sort of world and society still. But I believe, and I know that we are definitely heading back into that feeling space and really starting to get in touch with ourselves again so that we can lead those lives. Like you said, these experiences, you don't have to go somewhere to these ancient places to experience what, people called enlightenment or whatever, because even that can put a lot of pressure on people because people have this perceived idea, what is an enlightenment? oh, you're going to get struck down by some amazing things going to happen. But it's really in those quiet moments when you're sitting on the couch and you have an epiphany about something, or you make this realization, this deep realization about your own nature. And you could be anywhere. You could be walking on the beach when that happens. I think the key to it all is getting out of your current environment to experience that. Because when we're stuck in, say we're in the office all the time or in our houses, we're doing the same routines. It's actually trying to interrupt those routines just for a moment and just do something completely different. And it's in those moments where your brain structure changes a little bit. The chemistry sort of shifts around and goes, oh, this is different and new. All of a sudden, the creativity, the other stuff starts to feed through to you. And that's in those moments, you can receive that enlightenment anytime. We're receiving it all the time. Like you said, we're just not listening.
But wouldn't you say that we're enlightened already, that we have enlightenment within us?
Correct.
That it's like we just forget. We're already enlightened. It's just remembering who we are. And that's where our thought and thinking system, our operating system gets in the way. And that's where we lose the plot. That's when we need to see people like you and I, because that's all we do. I mean, we're just navigating people back home to who they are, which is that you're already enlightened, that you're already
absolutely
whole, whether you're healthy, sick, young or old, or rich or poor. And we just, all of us forget.
Yes.
Then we remember again. Then we forget. Then we remember again.
It's right. It's just it's that cycle.
And then midlife crisis wise, you forget to such a degree where you end up buying an expensive sports car or worse, but that's brilliant. Now, do you, with your coaching sessions and the program that you share with clients, and I was looking at your website, which is brilliant, by the way, can they choose different modalities or not even a modality? Because you have 2 different programs that I saw on your website. Can you share those?
Yeah, sure. So you can work with me just from your own sort of soul path mentoring, I call it. So it's if you're just seeking a little guidance with what's going on for you right now, and you can basically buy, like session packages.
As one was Activate You was one.
Yeah. So then we'll lead into a bit of the program type stuff. So the Activate You is very specifically designed for people that've actually had that call. They really know
they remember who they are.
They have definitely started to remember it. Absolutely. They've remembered who they are. They've received that call and they know they're here to be of service in some way to others, or they're here to create something. And that program is really about helping people align, really truly align to their soul's purpose in an attempt to see what is next in service for them. Now, it's really funny, that one, because I often find a lot of people are drawn to it because they want to start a business. And that's fine. Like a lot of people will come in and go, I want to start a business around this spiritual stuff that I'm teaching. And that's fine, perfectly fine. But what I often find is when we go through this initial alignment work, a lot of people go, well, I'm already experiencing that. I could actually just stay in my current job and just make some tweaks to it or add a few different things, and I'll still be living that purpose that will really align to me and fulfill me. It's all about that fulfillment at the end of the day. So it's helping people get the clarity of what they're truly here to do, their soul's purpose, really truly aligning to that. It's helping them connect to that in such a way that when they get the stumbles or they forget or they go off course a little bit, that they'll have that grounded foundation to always come back to, that truth to always come back to. And then obviously that fulfillment side of it is really about helping them feel that fulfillment by creating the life that they're trying to create in that space. And I guess the other side of things is some people come to me purely for their own spiritual work, and that can interweave, depending on the person, I will interweave some of the shaman. The shaman stuff comes out anyway. It's just naturally there in everything that I teach. But some people specifically want to do certain ceremonies or certain journeys and things like that, or I will suggest to them, let's do this. But I'm moving more into, I guess, that shaman side of things as well as an offering. It's not currently on my website, but it'll soon appear in the aspect of healings and things like that. So
you're very busy. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's sort of a broad sort of area of different things for different people. Well, that sort of come to me.
You mentioned the journeys in this country. There's a shamanic journey where they use spiritual medicine, whether it's ayahuasca, or I don't even remember the other stuff. It doesn't matter. But do you also not?
No, I'm definitely not a practitioner of that. It's also something I wouldn't do. It's all fun to sort of experience that because it's really, as we were sort of talking about before, you go to a different country to experience things because you're getting out of your own way. That's kind of what that sort of experience is. You're taking a hallucinogen basically to sort of get your ego self or your thinking self, just put them in the back corner while you explore in a different way. And to me, you can still generate that without the substances and things like that. And that's where we can do that work and help people learn how to bring about those experiences for themselves without the substances that people take.
The push, right. A little help from our chemical friends. I get it.
Look, I'm totally not against it. It's just something I wouldn't do or learn to do for others or anything at this stage anyway. So,
and I don't think you need it as a coach. And I think you're already tapped in and you really see your clients, which is a gift in itself because you really care about people. And I also think that from where I'm sitting here, 8,000 miles away around the globe here and another coast and here in Southern California, is that I don't believe that anyone's broken, whether you were diagnosed with something, whether you were physical or neurological or otherwise, that there is this divine guidance, this inner GPS. Essentially, that's all we're really pointing back to. It's pointing back home as coaches, is whether you're using a modality. And I don't believe personally, and I get off my bully pulpit because this is your episode, that any techniques really work because we all return back to that quintessential thought, that initial thought that doesn't even exist in the first place. It's illusory, but coming back home really is coming back to your essential nature where anything is possible. And that's where I think you really saw for yourself in Egypt and had little flickers, little teases of it during, your post-engineering career, which is brilliant. And it's a real gift for you to share that with us because you are a very special human being and also a brilliant coach. And I just want to thank you for coming on, sharing some teachings and wisdom in your journey on the Fearless Now. Can you tell the audience how they can reach out to you? Do you do Zoom and Skype and you go into the virtual portal with your clients too, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Majority of my work is online. People can find me at sagacityrising.com. That's my website. And, if you want to chat, there's a free discovery chat. You can just book in with me anytime or just email me. I'm quite happy for people to just reach out or DM me. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, more so in the social media space. So that's at sagacityrising. And of course, the podcast, A Groovy Enlightened Life. So I'd love people to go over there and check it out.
Go check it out. It's just wonderful. I'm going to brag about your podcast because it is really wonderful. I had no expectations and I particularly had a headache. It was kind of a stressful day, nothing to do with my work, but just in general. I was just caught up in some weird thinking like we all do. And I just put it on. And I'm driving down, I'm on the freeway and I hear your voice. And all of a sudden I'm just like, oh, okay. I don't know where she's going with any of this, but I'm just going to keep on listening. An hour later, I got to my destination and I listened to the complete episode and it's just real and it's authentic and it's just a deep dive and I dropped in. So 2 thumbs up. If I can drop in my busy mind and really connect with it, then 99% of people out there can do it too. So check out her podcast. It's Sagacity. I pronounced it right. Sagacity Rising, not Saga City. Go check out her website or coaching page. She offers a lot and she's a heart-centered woman and a coach and she would love to help you. So Maya, thank you so much. Love to have you on here again. Don't be a stranger.
Thank you so much, Sam. It's been absolutely wonderful chatting with you today.